everyone, and this is BioPhoenix here, and today we're going to be taking a look at a game based after Lupin the Third. Yeah, many years ago, I actually did a video talking about random games that were based after Lupin the Third anime series. It was back when I didn't know how to make a halfway decent thumbnail. And as for today, I originally did want to take a look at more games based after the series, but unfortunately though, I ran into some issues where two of the games that I picked ended up being a little bit too difficult to play because they were not in English. In fact, one of them was actually in Italian, believe it or not. So today, I'm just going to be taking a look at one game, and it's one that I can actually play, and that happens to be on the Sega Saturn, and that is Lupin the Third and the Sage of the Pyramid. And it was developed and published by Asmic Ace Entertainment, and it was released in 1998, so a pretty late release Sega Saturn game in Japan. And it happens to be a 3D action game. I'm not gonna get too much into the story here, but the story in this game is like very basic stuff. It's about Lupin wanting to steal some artifacts, and the more he steals the artifacts from it, the more like weird shit starts happening. So for your first playthrough of the game, you actually have to play as Lupin in his red jacket, but once you beat it though, you can actually unlock his other costumes, being from the one from part 1 and from part 3, and you can even play as Jigen, Goemon, and even Zenigata. So as for the gameplay, so as you can see here, it is a 3D action platformer with some puzzle elements, and your main goal is to get the treasure and then head for the exit. But you also got to avoid some bad guys and obstacles. But at least in this game, whenever you do get caught by an enemy, you can actually fight back, either with your fists, or you can use your gun, or even other items like grenades and stuff. So while you can use stealth in this game, I wouldn't classify it as a full-fledged stealth game since, you know, it doesn't really matter if you get caught or not, as long as you can actually get away from the enemy and also get your objective done. And there are 14 stages in total, and of course, the later on ones just get bigger. And at the end of each stage, it calculates all of the items that you picked up and all the enemies that you killed. But there is no, like, actual ranking system though, it just goes from like 1% to 100%. Also, the farther you play through this game, you actually get more loading screens of Fujiko, where she actually starts getting sexier as it goes on. So the developers really knew what they were thinking when they were making this. And some other things that did amuse me in this game is that in some of the display cases you can get items, and sometimes you can even find ammunition in there. So who the hell put ammunition in these like display cases in an ancient temple? And one other thing that I'm pretty sure most people won't get is that apparently Lupin gains his health back up by eating spheres in this game. So yeah, there's another game out there where someone eats spheres to gain back their health back up. But at least this one, I can tell you right now, is not nearly as shitty as the other one that I'm thinking of. So now, let's start talking about the game's controls. And the controls in this one are definitely pretty dated. But as dated and wonky as they are though, I did found that this game was actually pretty easy to get used to once you got the hang of it. So you move around with the D-pad, and thankfully there is actually no tank controls in this game, because as much as I do like tank controls in horror games, I just don't think they work very well in action platformers like this. The A button is the action button, but if you hold it down while moving, then your character will actually walk really slow. You jump with the B button, X allows you to sprint for a short while, and Y allows you to attack. The C button uses items, and the Z button allows you to switch between different items. And the shoulder buttons allow you to control the camera. So as dated as it is to use L and R for changing the camera, obviously the Sega Saturn controller doesn't have the dual analog stick. But strangely enough, I actually found that it was actually pretty easy to get used to it, even though the camera angles in this game can be a little annoying for that there are certain objects that can get in your way of vision, but at least you can actually have full control over the camera. But as for the walking speed of this game, it's really weird. Okay, so, like, the game is, like, kinda sensitive and a bit too fast. Like, it's almost like Lupin moves at, like, the speed of, like, Sonic the Hedgehog. Especially when he sprints with his goofy-ass animation animation, which yeah, I'm sure as you can tell, the animations in this game are definitely pretty goofy, but I actually think it kind of fits with the game's charm though, because I mean, Lupin himself actually ran in a pretty goofy fashion too in the shows. So even running in his default speed, it's still a little bit too sensitive for my liking for this type of game, but the good news is that at least you can actually slow yourself down by holding down A. And trust me, there are some sections in the game where you really do need that button. Like for an example, with the final stage with this like disappearing platform like centipede looking part. Yeah, I can't imagine doing that without holding down the A button. But I should also mention that whenever you do sprint in this game and then jump, you can actually kind of do like a forward jump, kind of like how Mario does like the super forward jump within Super Mario 64. And one thing I didn't find out until like way later on in the game is that if you keep punching in this game and eventually pressing the jump button as you're pressing the punch, then you'll actually do different moves. Like normally if you keep pressing punch, he just does punch punch kick, right? Well, sometimes when you press the jump button in the middle of that, then he'll switch to doing an axe handle punch, and then he'll do like a body slam that like combos them like 3 times. And it also looks pretty damn funny when he does that too. And I do think like the punching and the jumping and all that is pretty responsive, although the action button can be a little bit finicky when trying to hit some of the switches though. But other than that though, like the walking definitely does take some time to get used to, the camera angles are a little bit wonky, and yeah, like I said with the action button, it can be a little finicky sometimes, but other than that, I would say that the controls in this game are decent, but definitely do take some time to get used to. It is a very playable game though, I can tell you that. So now let's get moving on and start talking about the other things like the graphics. And the graphics in this one are pretty much what you would expect for a 3D game at the time. But even compared to other Sega Saturn games at the time though, I don't really know if I would even say it's that great looking, but I would say it's okay. While I do think the characters in this game look how they're supposed to, yeah, even though they're blocky as shit looking, you can at least tell what it's supposed to be. It's not just some like half-assed thrown together garbage looking shit. And as much as I do like the themes in this game, my one problem with it is that I just find some of the backgrounds are just kinda dull, and also they're very repetitive too. I just think that the Egyptian backgrounds, it could have looked a little bit more lively for me personally, even though I do get what they were going for here, but given that everyone else in this game is like brightly colorful, I guess it just needed to stand out, right? So the in-game graphics, yeah, it's definitely not the prettiest to look at, but the character animations do make it amusing enough though, so there is that. Also, this game does have some anime cutscenes, although the anime cutscenes in this game are a little bit choppy, and definitely not as good as like the shows or the movies animations, but at least they got the look right. And now, as for the game's music, I do like it myself. I think it's pretty good. It's nothing super memorable, but I think it's good for what it is. Although a lot of the songs do repeat a lot though, so there's not a whole lot of songs in the game, so you're gonna hear a lot of them like repeated over and over. But I will say, there was one song in the game that almost kinda sounded like a Super Nintendo game, and to be exact, it almost sounded like a Super Nintendo game made by Squaresoft. It was very surreal. Also, the remix version of the Lupin the Third theme song actually plays during the final boss battle, and it's pretty cool. I enjoyed that. But yeah, I would say the music definitely does have its interesting moments that I did like, but overall, I'd say it was decent, nothing crazy, but, you know, pretty good. So now, if you want to go out and buy this game, so I only found a couple of copies, and the cheapest I've seen it for was $20. And the highest I've seen it for was 50, but I've seen quite a few of them that were mostly in like 20s and 30s, so definitely not a really expensive Sega Saturn game in Japan, but also not the cheapest either, but I would say it's definitely affordable. And I'm pretty sure I don't need to explain the fact that if you do have a RAM cartridge of some sort, mostly being an action replay, then it actually makes your Sega Saturn region-free, which is fucking awesome. So now, as for my overall thoughts on Lupin the Third and the Sage of the Pyramid, is that, surprisingly, I kind of enjoyed this game. Now, it's not a great game, but I would at least say it's a decent game that I did enjoy my time with. Not only did I enjoy it as someone who is a fan of the series, but I did enjoy it for a early 3D action platformer of the time. No, yes, it definitely does have its issues. Like I said, the walking speed in this game can be a bit too fast and a little bit sensitive, but at least you do have ways to get around that, but even still, it can be a little bit sensitive. Then you got the camera angle being kind of annoying in this game, but at least you can fully control the camera, but sometimes things can get a little bit in your way sometimes. The action button on the switches can be a little bit finicky, but one complaint I do have of something that I haven't mentioned yet is that I do find there are certain levels of this game that do feel a little bit on the lazy side. Just as an example, there's literally a stage where all you do is that you just keep running down this like huge slope, breaking through the windows, and then you just get the treasure at the end and there you go. That's like literally the entire level. I'm sure you can all speedrun this shit without even trying. But for me personally, there's not that many levels that were like this. I found there were more good levels than bad levels, and even like the bad levels, they weren't really that bad, but more like they just weren't as great as I was kind of expecting them to be. But other than all this though, I did like this game for what it was. I thought it was kind of enjoyable. So when I was gathering footage for this game, I actually didn't want to put the controller down, so there is that. It at least kept my interest. And knowing all this game is definitely really easy to play if you don't speak Japanese. In fact, all the menus and such are all in English, which is very good. So I was actually really surprised by this game. I didn't think this game was going to be anything that special, but I don't know, I kind of liked it. Maybe I like it more than most people would, but I definitely wouldn't say it's a bad game. But I will say that it is still kind of a tough game to recommend, mostly for like the controls being a little bit outdated for this type of game, but like I said, at least it didn't use tank controls. Because personally, I find a game like this holds up a lot better than something like Tomb Raider. As much as I liked Tomb Raider as a kid, it's one of those games that's really hard for me to get back into now due to the tank controls of like a non-survival horror game. And you have to use your precise precision accuracy for your jumping and walking and making sure you don't fall off a ledge by accident. And that'll take us to the end of this review, so as always, thanks for watching and commenting, and have yourselves a great day.
Come on, guys, hustle up! We gotta get back there before my pants explode!